The price of turnips plunges once again, and a wave of unease spreads through everyone gathered in the room. The female protagonist stares at the figures before her, struggling to process what she is seeing. News arrives that the farmers completed harvesting the remaining green herbs only yesterday. If the territory sells those herbs immediately, the proceeds would be enough to purchase emergency food supplies for approximately 3 days. 3 days. The number feels absurdly small. Even so, it is better than nothing. The problem is that green herbs are far from ordinary agricultural products. They serve as the essential ingredient for recovery potions and are constantly purchased by merchants and alchemists. Their market value is usually stable and dependable. For the price of such a valuable commodity to collapse so dramatically, there can only be one explanation. Something extraordinary has happened. A bitter laugh echoes in her mind. She is certain that this disaster can be traced back to that cursed girl yet again. In her previous life, she had been the eldest child in a family burdened by poverty. With a younger brother and sister relying on her, she worked tirelessly to escape their circumstances. Through determination and relentless effort, she earned admission to a prestigious university. She devoted herself completely to her studies and eventually graduated. At last, it seemed as though her struggles had paid off when she secured employment at a major company. But the victory was short-lived. At the age of 27, she died from severe overwork, her body finally collapsing under years of relentless pressure and exhaustion. Yet death was not the conclusion of her story. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself inhabiting the body of a woman from a romance fantasy novel she had once enjoyed reading during brief moments of free time. Realizing where she was, she made a decision. She would align herself with the second male lead, whose storyline she remembered particularly well from her former life. The novel's central narrative had never involved her character directly. Instead, it revolved around a heroine who had returned to the past after suffering betrayal and death, seeking revenge against the emperor who had exploited and discarded her. The regressed protagonist carefully manipulated events to achieve her goals. She won over the second male lead and systematically eliminated every obstacle that stood in her way. Ultimately, she defeated the story's greatest villain, the emperor himself, and elevated the third imperial prince, an illegitimate royal, to the throne. Penelope, however, was never an important figure within that tale. Her destiny was simple and forgettable. She married a minor northern lord, a poor baron whose existence barely registered within the larger story. Only a month after their marriage, her husband was killed by a monster. The shock of that tragedy awakened memories of her previous life in South Korea. Unfortunately, her possession occurred near the very end of the novel. Most of the dramatic twists, political schemes, and memorable events had already passed. When she had originally read the story, she often skimmed through many sections, never imagining she would someday become part of that world herself. Now she finds herself in the position of a northern ruler's widow, someone so insignificant that, compared to the original plot, even the pillow beneath the heroine's head seemed more relevant than she was. If circumstances continue along this path, surviving the approaching winter will be nearly impossible. The territory possesses emergency food reserves sufficient for only 2 months. For a region already struggling to endure, that amount is dangerously inadequate. Around her, heated arguments break out as officials and residents voice conflicting opinions. Frustration fills the room as people debate what should have been done sooner and who should bear responsibility for the current crisis. Penelope allows their voices to fade into the background as she focuses on her own thoughts. Following her husband's death, the welfare of everyone living within the territory has become her responsibility. Their lives are no longer someone else's concern. The burden rests entirely on her shoulders. Winter is drawing closer with every passing day, and the harsh northern land offers little chance for mistakes. Still, despite the grim reality, a small sense of reassurance remains. She possesses knowledge that nobody else has. She remembers the original novel. She knows what events are waiting in the future. Even though turnip prices have fallen, they can still be sold in bulk. As for green herbs, the current market instability does not change their long-term value. They will continue to be sought after as indispensable medicinal ingredients. If she proceeds carefully, makes the right choices, and uses the knowledge she gained from the original story, then there is still hope. Surviving this winter may be difficult, but it should be possible. Beyond that, she has already mapped out what she wants her future to look like. Once the territory recovers and reaches a stable position, she intends to adopt a distant relative from the Hallows baronial line and eventually hand over governance to them. After that, She plans to step away from responsibility and enjoy a peaceful life while she is still young. Unlike her previous life, this time she intends to fulfill her long-held dream of retiring early, with enough wealth and comfort to live freely. At least, that is the future she imagines. Reality, however, has other plans. The greatest source of anxiety stems from a development nobody could have anticipated. Overnight, trade routes with the Eastern continent suddenly became accessible. That single event shattered every expectation and overturned the foundation of their economy. As a result, Penelope now finds herself staring directly at the possibility of starvation, forced to deal with consequences she firmly attributes to the female lead's actions. Life, she reflects bitterly, never grants easy victories. According to the events of the original novel, the female lead was responsible for establishing a new commercial partnership with the Eastern continent. Through her efforts, trade flourished and merchant vessels began arriving in the empire carrying enormous quantities of herbs. These imported goods were not only abundant, but also remarkably affordable while maintaining excellent quality. The consequences were immediate. The market value of herbs produced in the north collapsed. Citizens throughout the empire celebrated the female lead's achievement. To them, she was a benefactor who had made recovery potions accessible to ordinary people for the first time. For northern territories, however, the outcome was disastrous. Many small lords depended heavily on herb cultivation and sales to support their lands. The sudden price crash pushed countless territories toward financial ruin, exactly as it was happening now. Yet Penelope's greatest concern is not the cause of their troubles. It is the fact that they are wasting precious time arguing. How much longer do they intend to debate responsibility? Determining who is at fault will not fill empty stomachs. Their only priority should be finding a way to survive. Despite that, the two vassals continue exchanging accusations until several others finally step in and demand that they stop. The spectacle is embarrassing. Men of their age should know better than to behave like squabbling children, especially in front of the acting lord. Their conduct turns a serious crisis into something bordering on absurdity. Penelope finally intervenes. Her instructions are straightforward. The turnips are not to be discarded under any circumstances. Every harvest must be distributed evenly among the villagers, and any excess should be properly dried and preserved for future consumption. The immediate emergency takes precedence over everything else. At present, the castle possesses enough emergency provisions to sustain the villagers for only 10 days. 10 days. Even if those supplies were reserved entirely for the lord's household and denied to everyone else, they would likely last no longer than 3 months. No, even that estimate may be overly optimistic. The truth is far simpler and far harsher. They have only 10 days before the situation becomes critical. Under such circumstances, declaring bankruptcy almost feels like the logical choice. Still, Penelope refuses to stop there. She asks whether there are any additional problems that have not yet been reported. Unfortunately, there are plenty. Winter is approaching rapidly, and with it comes an increase in monster activity. Mercenaries will need to be recruited before the season fully arrives. Their supply of magic stones is also dangerously low. Replenishing those reserves alone will require at least 50,000 gold. Furthermore, if the villagers are to endure the winter safely, the territory must somehow secure no less than 3 months' worth of emergency food reserves. Firewood and reliable access to water must also be prepared in advance. The list continues growing and growing. For a brief moment, Penelope seriously considers abandoning everything and fleeing. To put it plainly, they have no money. After everything she endured in her previous life, she can hardly believe that financial hardship still controls her destiny. The pressure settles heavily upon her shoulders. What exactly is she supposed to do? More importantly, how are they expected to survive the coming winter? After weighing the situation, she finally presents a proposal. They will borrow money. Specifically, they will seek a loan from the Imperial Bank. The response is immediate. Shock sweeps through the room. One of the vassals hesitantly explains that such an idea is impossible. The manager of the Imperial Bank branch would never approve a loan for the Halo territory. After all, the Imperial Bank is the largest financial institution in the nation. Why would it risk lending money to a territory teetering on the verge of bankruptcy? At this point, it would surprise no one if the territory collapsed altogether before the next day arrived. Penelope's answer comes without hesitation. She strikes the desk firmly with her hand. The sharp sound silences the room. She declares that she will personally visit the Imperial Bank tomorrow. She will secure the loan herself, and with that money, they will make it through the winter. Another objection quickly follows. The branch manager is merely a commoner. He possesses no noble title and has never received a barony or any similar honor from His Majesty the Emperor. For the widow of a baron to lower herself before such a man would be deeply humiliating. If the late baron were alive to witness such a scene, he would undoubtedly be outraged. Penelope remains completely unaffected. If avoiding starvation requires it, then perhaps they should all be prepared to grab the manager's trouser legs and beg. Her blunt statement leaves the elderly vassal speechless. Within such a conservative territory, the idea of a noble humbling themselves before a commoner is almost unimaginable. Yet the acting lord stands before them and openly announces her willingness to do exactly that. Her position could not be clearer. If anyone in the room possesses a better solution, she demands that they speak up immediately. Otherwise, are they all prepared to starve together? Silence follows. At dawn tomorrow, she announces she will personally travel to the nearest branch of the Imperial Bank and confront whatever challenges await her there. The story shifts to the Imperial Bank. As soon as Penelope steps into the magnificent building, several people inside begin casting curious glances in her direction. Unlike most visitors, she does not appear particularly intimidated. After all, she had previously withdrawn funds from this very place without any difficulty. However, today's situation is entirely different. This time, she cannot help wondering whether the branch manager will actually agree to lend her the money she desperately needs. In the end, she realizes that the burden of repayment will likely fall on her shoulders. For a brief moment, a reckless thought enters her mind. Perhaps she should simply run away. There seems to be no possible solution. Inside her head, two familiar versions of herself immediately begin arguing. Angel Penelope reminds her that the territory possesses barely 10 days worth of emergency food supplies. Is she seriously prepared to stand by and watch the residents starve? Evil Penelope responds without hesitation, saying that whether they starve or not should not matter. Their own situation is already miserable enough. The angelic side reacts with complete shock, demanding to know how such a heartless idea could even be considered. Is she really suggesting that everyone be abandoned to their fate? Meanwhile, the real Penelope can only sniff quietly as she watches the internal dispute unfold. The truth is that she has nowhere to escape to and no alternative path available. More importantly, she cannot simply turn her back on the people who depend on her or abandon the responsibilities of governing the territory. Upon reaching the counter, a bank employee politely asks what brings her there. Halfway through the conversation, the clerk suddenly recognizes that she is a noble. His expression changes instantly. Penelope introduces herself as the representative of Halo territory and explains that she is acting under the authority of the Lord. She then requests a meeting with the branch manager. The clerk quickly regains his professionalism and leads her further inside. After learning that a representative from Halo territory has arrived, the branch manager immediately asks what business she has with the Imperial Bank. Without hesitation, Penelope states that she wishes to apply for a loan. His reaction unfolds exactly as she had anticipated. The recently established trade routes with the Eastern continent have undoubtedly dealt a severe blow to Halo territory's economy. The territory's primary income comes from medicinal herbs and taxes collected from its residents. Unfortunately, this year's harvest has been an outright disaster. From the manager's point of view, the likelihood of recovering any loaned funds is practically non-existent. After spending a moment reviewing the relevant documents, he informs her that Halo territory previously received an approved loan 6 years earlier. If the territory's farmland is offered as collateral once again, the bank can provide a loan of 100,000 gold. Penelope is stunned. 100,000 gold is nowhere close to the amount she needs. She asks whether there is any possibility of reconsideration, hoping the bank might show some flexibility given the circumstances. The manager rejects the request immediately. Even if she were to continue pleading, he explains, the farmland of Halo territory simply does not possess enough value to justify a larger loan. Penelope argues that despite those limitations, surely some kind of exception could be made this one time. At that, the manager's tone sharpens considerably. He tells her that she seems to have misunderstood the purpose of a bank. Loans are granted based on a customer's ability to generate profit and repay their debt. Simply being a noble does not entitle someone to special treatment. The contempt hidden within his words is impossible to miss. Understanding exactly what he is implying, Penelope chooses not to argue further. Instead, she quietly lowers her head and presents the item she brought with her. The gesture instantly provokes anger from the knight standing nearby. Before the situation can escalate, Benny Lopez raises a hand and stops him. Remaining calm, Benny explains that Penelope is willing to place the Lord's castle itself up as collateral. The statement leaves both the knight and the branch manager utterly bewildered. For a moment, neither of them can comprehend what they have just heard. The knight is completely stunned by what he has just heard. In his eyes, offering the Lord's castle as collateral is no different from placing the entire territory on the line. He cannot understand how she could make such a decision so casually. Unable to remain silent, he attempts to object, but before he can say anything meaningful, she quietly asks him not to speak further in front of the others. The knight falls silent. Looking at her face, he finally understands the reality of the situation. If she walks out of this bank without securing the loan, countless lives within the territory may be lost. Meanwhile, the branch manager's interest has clearly been piqued. Curious, he asks exactly how much money she wishes to borrow. Without hesitation, Penelope states her figure. She requires 1 million gold. Furthermore, she wants the Imperial Bank to lend her the full amount of 1 million gold. The manager pauses briefly as he considers her request. A faint smile gradually appears on his face. Inwardly, he begins calculating. Halo territory is located near the Grand Duchy. If the territory eventually falls into the bank's hands, the land could easily be redeveloped. Noble villas could be constructed there, and any remaining valuable assets could be extracted and sold. Recovering the money would likely be a simple matter. Just then, Penelope adds another condition. She requests that the repayment deadline be set at 1 year. The manager nearly laughs. To him, she appears hopelessly naive. He cannot help thinking that aristocratic young ladies truly know nothing about finance or reality. Nevertheless, he keeps those thoughts to himself. Instead, he enthusiastically agrees. He praises the proposed arrangement, sets the interest rate at 10%, and informs her that repayments will be collected every month. Penelope accepts every condition immediately. However, she follows up with one additional request. She wants the loan paid entirely in imperial gold coins. The manager's expression freezes. That demand catches him completely off guard. Since the emperor's passing, the economy has been suffering from severe instability. Among the many consequences, inflation has become one of the most serious problems. Items that once cost only a handful of coins now require hundreds. An apple that previously sold for 13 coins can now cost as much as 300. The value of ordinary currency continues to collapse day after day. Gold coins, on the other hand, retain their worth. Because of this, demand for gold has skyrocketed throughout the empire. The manager quickly apologizes and explains that the bank's vault contains only a limited supply of gold coins. He assures her that the bank's official notes remain widely accepted and reliable. For that reason, he recommends issuing the loan through a bank check instead. Standing nearby, the knight inwardly scoffs. He wonders whether the manager genuinely expects anyone to believe that explanation. To him, it is obvious that the man simply does not want to hand over imperial gold coins to a struggling territory like Halo. Penelope, however, remains perfectly calm. Without showing the slightest sign of frustration, she states that if the Imperial Bank cannot provide the loan in gold coins, she will simply take her request elsewhere. More specifically, she mentions a competing bank. Her reasoning is straightforward. A cunning and profit-driven manager at a rival institution might gladly offer even 2 million gold to the Lord's representative of Halo territory. After all, with a repayment period of only 1 year, the opportunity would be like a perfectly ripe pumpkin rolling directly into his hands. The manager's confidence instantly falters. Realizing that he could lose the deal entirely, he hurriedly changes his position. First, he claims that he may have been mistaken regarding the amount of gold currently stored in the vault. A moment later, he revises his statement yet again. In fact, there is no need to verify anything at all. Why wait? They can prepare the contract immediately. And so, after considerable negotiation, Penelope finally succeeds in obtaining the loan. Once all the paperwork has been completed and the agreement finalized, another concern begins troubling her mind. How exactly is she supposed to repay 1 million gold within a single year? As they leave, the knight suggests visiting the market while they still have some spare time. To his surprise, she rejects the idea immediately. Instead, she announces that their destination should be the stock exchange. The knight stares at her in disbelief. The choice seems completely unexpected. Penelope remains calm and simply orders the coachman to head there without delay. Deep down, she has a suspicion. Somewhere within the market, there may be a stock whose value is on the verge of exploding upward. And if that opportunity truly exists, she intends to claim it before anyone else does. Inside the trading hall, pandemonium reigns. One trader yells at everyone to buy quickly, insisting that Russell Construction shares have become unbelievably cheap and are practically being handed out for free. Meanwhile, another investor is on the verge of despair, lamenting the destruction of his wealth, calling everyone frauds, and saying he may as well jump into the river because everything is lost. This is what a stock market in a medieval world looks like. Unsurprisingly, it is utter chaos. The emperor's death marks the downfall of the old powers that once stood behind him. Trading firms backed by the conservative factions cannot avoid being dragged down with him. In the end, the people who suffer the most are the ordinary investors who had nothing to do with the conflict. The heroine, completely driven by her desire for revenge, probably never had the time or concern to think about these consequences when she chose to eliminate the emperor. Not only did she bring devastation to the smaller northern territories, but she also sent the stock market crashing in a single move. Penelope is unsure whether she should admire the scale of the achievement or call it something entirely different. Her knight asks if she intends to remain there any longer. Since Penelope already knows how the original story unfolds, she came hoping to take advantage of information that others do not possess. However, there is no simple way to explain such reasoning. After a brief pause, she tells the knight that she had not intended to reveal this, but she recently heard some remarkable insider information through her father's friend's cousin. She tells him to trust her without asking too many questions. Hearing that explanation, the knight can only pray that fortune is on their side. In his mind, the Baroness must be under tremendous pressure if she is willing to rely on such questionable information to save her estate. Penelope, meanwhile, focuses on finding the investment catalog first. After spending some time searching through the listings, she finally locates it. The stocks of the Eastern Continent Shipping and Trade Company are already drowning in losses. Western Temple Construction is equally hopeless, considering the heroine is destined to destroy it in the future. Penelope continues examining the list carefully, convinced that somewhere among the countless entries is a hidden opportunity no one has recognized yet. Then her gaze settles on a particular name, Durick Railroad Company. The instant she reads it, the name triggers a vague sense of familiarity. A moment later, realization strikes. This is the very railroad company in which the heroine secretly invested. According to the original story, the emperor wanted to reduce the overwhelming concentration of wealth and influence within the central regions of the continent. To achieve this goal, he combined the powers of magic and alchemy to launch an ambitious railroad enterprise. The Durick Railroad Company was one of the projects the heroine casually designed during the later stages of the story. Penelope never imagined that the company would already exist at this point in time. Since it has only recently been established, its stock value remains extremely low, making it an opportunity that most investors have completely overlooked. Each share is priced at 50 gold coins. With a capital of 100,000 gold, Penelope would be able to acquire 2,000 shares. Although the original novel never revealed exactly how the railroad venture ultimately ended, she knew that as the story moved toward its climax, some significant development was certain to take place. There was a real possibility that this risky investment could pay off handsomely. A company administrator notices her studying the listings and politely approaches her. He informs her that if she is interested in purchasing or selling stocks, he would be happy to assist. Penelope does not waste any time considering her options. She immediately announces that she intends to buy 2,000 shares of the Durick Railroad Company. The administrator is visibly startled by her choice. He quickly advises her to reconsider, explaining that investing such a large amount in a newly established company is dangerous. Instead, he recommends purchasing around 100 shares as a safer option. Penelope rejects the suggestion without the slightest hesitation. She firmly states that she plans to invest the full amount of 100,000 gold. The moment the administrator sees the enormous sum she is prepared to spend, his eyes widen in disbelief. Once he learns that the payment will be made using gold coins issued by the Imperial Bank, his attitude immediately becomes far more respectful and professional. He politely asks her to wait while he prepares the stock certificate. The entire transaction serves as a striking demonstration of both wealth and unwavering confidence. Afterward, the knight turns to her and asks whether it is finally time to leave. Penelope nods and agrees, remarking that lunchtime is approaching anyway. Just as they are about to depart, a panicked voice suddenly calls out, claiming that a major problem has occurred. The knight immediately becomes alert and asks what happened. The man hurriedly explains that the value of third-grade medicinal herbs has fallen once again, dropping to only half of its previous price. The knight can hardly believe what he is hearing. He exclaims that such a thing should be impossible. because the entire wagon load had originally been valued at nearly 10,000 gold. The unfortunate farmer confirms that the news is true. He explains that herbs in excellent condition naturally command higher prices. But because the northern merchants rushed enormous quantities onto the market all at once, the herbs from the north have become nearly worthless. With a grim expression, he adds that if things continue this way, many people living in the northern territories may not survive the coming winter. A wave of unease spreads throughout the crowd. People gradually realize that this crisis is not simply another person's misfortune. If conditions worsen, the consequences could eventually threaten everyone. Penelope remains calm because this outcome is exactly what she expected from the beginning. Without wasting a second, she asks where the wagon carrying the green herbs can be found. The farmer replies that it is parked nearby. Penelope immediately tells her knight to follow the cart because they have another destination to visit. The farmer attempts to change her mind. He points out that even if they transport the herbs somewhere else to sell them, they would be fortunate to receive more than 5,000 gold. Penelope calmly shakes her head. She explains that they are not going to another marketplace. She has heard that a branch of the magic tower is located nearby, and that is their true destination. Not long afterward, they arrive at the magic tower. Inside the building, two men are occupied with their work. One of them, an elderly scholar, grumbles loudly about his exhaustion. He complains that he managed to sleep for only 3 hours before being forced back to work. He then asks the younger man if there is truly nowhere else he can go to rest in peace. His irritation continues to build. Finally, unable to endure it any longer, the old man snatches a book from the other man's hands and angrily demands to know why that troublesome individual refuses to leave them alone and continues causing problems. Penelope keeps wondering how much farther she still has to climb. When she eventually raises her head and takes a proper look, she cannot help questioning whether this place could genuinely be the entrance. And even if it is, she has absolutely no idea how anyone is meant to enter it. Half an hour later, she and her knight finally reach their destination. The two of them stand there hesitantly, uncertain whether the structure before them is truly the famous Tower of Magic. From somewhere nearby, Penelope hears numbers being recited in a flat, mechanical tone. A storage stone is 20,000 gold. A purification stone is 10,000 gold. Without even bothering to lift his eyes from the papers in front of him, an elderly man continues speaking. He casually informs them that anyone wishing to handle a magical stone barrier should proceed to the second floor. For a brief moment, Penelope wonders if the old man is even addressing her. Yet he continues without the slightest pause. A magical device for tracking an unfaithful husband costs 30,000 gold. If you are looking for a love potion, visit an alchemist instead. And for the sake of accuracy, all those stories claiming such potions are affected or modified by emotions are completely fabricated nonsense and should not be trusted. Penelope's knight immediately stiffens in irritation at the man's dismissive attitude. However, Penelope quickly signals for him to stay calm. She finds herself thinking about how occupied this old man must be. Even with customers standing directly in front of him, he never once looks away from his documents. It is the first time she has encountered a magician among other magicians, a person who handles miracles as though they are nothing more than ordinary office work. Her thoughts naturally wander to the master of the tower. A tower master is a magician who has attained the highest possible realm, an existence rumored to possess enough power to divide mountains and make rivers reverse their course. She clearly remembers that the tower master in the original story had been described in exactly that manner. As the memory resurfaces, uncertainty begins to creep into her mind. She starts to wonder whether coming here had really been the correct decision. Even so, she states the reason for her visit. She explains that she has come to the tower in order to sell herbs. At those words, the old man finally shows a reaction. For the first time, he lifts his gaze and stares at her as though he cannot believe what he has just heard. He comments that it is astonishing that there are still people who do not know herbs have lost all value. Then, almost to himself, he wonders whether she has arrived from some entirely different dimension. In response, Penelope calmly removes the item she brought with her. She reveals a green herb whose stem, leaves, and unopened flower buds remain perfectly attached. Only 2 days have passed since it was harvested. The instant the old man lays eyes on it, a sharp light flashes across his gaze. His attention locks onto the stem and the buds. With clear disbelief, he declares that such a thing should be impossible. Meanwhile, Penelope silently questions whether this elderly man is actually all right. The old man, however, suddenly speaks as though someone has shaken him awake after a long sleep. He remarks that it appears both of them have already realized that this place is not in a healthy state. Then, gesturing to the surroundings as if the evidence is obvious, he says that the circumstances are exactly what they seem. The condition of the tower, as anyone can plainly see, is truly terrible. Because of the two of them, the old man has finally managed to uncover an answer to something that has troubled him for a very long time. Thanks to that discovery, he feels as though he might finally be able to get some proper rest. Even if it is only for 10 minutes, it would still be a luxury. And if fortune happens to favor him, perhaps he could even sleep for as long as 15 minutes. As it happens, Penelope has specifically been searching for green herbs that still have their stems attached. Ordinarily, when green herbs are used in potion making, only the leaves are considered important. Most people believe the rest of the plant has little value. The truth, however, is very different. Green herbs have numerous applications that extend far beyond common knowledge. Their stems and flower buds in particular contain extraordinary properties. The person who first stumbled upon this fact was none other than the Tower Master. Since the information was mentioned only briefly in a side story, Penelope does not know exactly how the discovery was made. What she does know is that it must have been the result of countless experiments performed by a wizard within the novel. At this point in the timeline, the Magic Tower should already be aware of the true value hidden within green herb stems and flower buds. She also understands the significance of the current situation. By now, the herb farms in the north would have already torn up their fields and abandoned them due to the trade crisis that occurred on the eastern continent. That means there is only one person currently in possession of green herbs that still retain both their stems and flower buds. That person is Penelope. The old man asks her how many herbs she has brought. Penelope answers that she possesses enough to completely fill an entire cart. She further explains that every herb is in outstanding condition. The moment he hears that, the old man lets out a satisfied remark. He says that today he might finally be able to sleep peacefully for a full hour. Without delay, he presents an offer: 400,000 gold. Penelope rejects it immediately. Instead, she raises the price: 500,000 gold. Her response leaves both the old man and her knight visibly stunned. The old man questions whether she truly understands the current value of green herbs. He points out that the amount she is demanding is nearly 10 times higher than the market rate. Penelope remains calm. She explains that green herbs with intact stems and flower buds are exceptionally difficult to find, even in the northern regions. She adds that the only reason she came here is because circumstances within her territory make long-distance travel difficult. If she were to transport even enough herbs to stock a single store in the capital, she could easily obtain 800,000 gold. The old man responds that if the herbs had been preserved inside a storage stone, he would have considered paying more. Unfortunately, given the current circumstances, the highest amount he can offer is 200,000 gold. He insists that he cannot increase the price beyond that point. After considering the situation, Penelope proposes a different arrangement. She suggests a compromise: 300,000 gold. However, she wants the payment made entirely in magic stones. This proposal surprises the old man even more than her previous demand. Magic stones are vital for the protection of villages because they are used to sustain magical barriers that keep monsters away. Although they can sometimes be purchased through ordinary markets, most people obtain them through the Magic Tower. Buying directly from a wizard is significantly cheaper than acquiring them through other channels. The old man admits that her proposal is extremely tempting. Then he asks whether she is willing to call him Lecter. Penelope agrees. The two shake hands to seal the agreement. She assures him that everything will be prepared and delivered no later than this afternoon. Afterward, she asks how soon she can receive the magic stones. Lecter answers that he can have them ready by the very same afternoon. Penelope then brings up another request. She says she would like to hire a wizard for her territory. Specifically, she needs someone capable of constructing a magic stone barrier before winter arrives. Lecter explains that employing a wizard requires a fee of 100,000 gold. In addition, the magic stones needed for the barrier must be paid for separately. After hearing this, Penelope adjusts her proposal. In that case, she says, she will only accept magic stones worth 100,000 gold in exchange for the herbs. Lecter laughs lightly and comments that she is remarkably clever. He notes that such an arrangement will make matters considerably easier for him. Penelope then asks when the wizard can be expected to arrive. Rather than answering directly, Lecter tells her to wake up because a request involving a magic stone barrier has already appeared. The statement leaves her confused. She has no idea what he means. Then she notices that Lecter is no longer speaking to her. Instead, he appears to be addressing someone else. He asks whether that person had not claimed to be looking for work. Unsure who he is talking to, Penelope glances around the room. Without warning, a man suddenly rises from his seat. In an irritated tone, he demands to know what is happening all of a sudden. Their eyes meet. As Penelope studies him, one thought immediately comes to mind. He looks strangely gloomy. The man then bluntly tells her to get lost. For a moment, Penelope is so startled that she wonders if she misheard him. But the man repeats himself. Once again, he tells her to get lost. A wave of confusion sweeps through her as she stares at him, unable to understand what in the world is wrong with this man. Lecter smacked the man and immediately reprimanded him, saying that such words were not something a normal person should be saying. He told him to get himself cleaned up, spend some time outside under the sun, and start interacting with actual people for once. The good-looking man frowned in annoyance and questioned what kind of ridiculous advice that was. Watching the exchange, Penelope could not shake the feeling that there was something fundamentally off about the man's personality. Noticing her concern, Lecter assured her that appearances could be deceiving. Even if the man did not seem particularly reliable at first glance, his abilities were at least more than adequate. He told her there was no need to be concerned, because if anything happened to the magic stone barrier, the magic tower would accept full responsibility and arrange for all necessary repairs afterward. Just then, the gloomy-looking man walked closer to Lecter and complained about him continuing to speak nonsense. He muttered under his breath that the conversation was making him feel suffocated. The two suddenly locked eyes, both widening them for a brief moment. Without warning, the man announced that he would only agree to work for an amount worth 100,000 gold. For an instant, Penelope felt as if his gaze had landed directly on her. The strange feeling caught her off guard, leaving her uncertain whether it had truly happened or if it was simply a trick of her imagination. Turning toward Lecter, she called his name. He looked at her and asked if there was some kind of problem. Lowering her voice, Penelope carefully asked whether there might be another mage available instead. It was not that she completely lacked faith in the man, but she could not help worrying that someone so lazy might not put enough effort into the work. Lecter answered with an apologetic expression, explaining that there was unfortunately no other mage lounging around in the magic tower at the moment. What he actually meant was that there was no alternative mage available whatsoever. Having run out of options, Penelope hesitated. Although her trust in the man remained incomplete, the magic tower had already guaranteed that they would take responsibility if the barrier encountered any issues. With little choice left, she decided she would have to place her faith in them for the time being. After a short pause, she asked if they happened to know an alchemist who could be recommended to her. She explained that her territory was also in need of an alchemist. Hearing this, Lecter glanced back at the gloomy man and remarked that, coincidentally, the very same individual possessed quite impressive knowledge when it came to alchemy. He even added that the man's natural talent in alchemy might surpass his talent for magic. Lecter then continued by saying that if Penelope was willing to pay an additional 50,000 gold, the man would also handle all matters related to alchemy alongside his other duties. The information leaves Penelope utterly stunned. Since the amount being discussed is only a small portion of the full cost, the man immediately comments on it. He points out that whenever decisions are being made, someone should at least bother asking for his opinion first. Lecter, however, quickly counters his complaint. He explains that his mind has already been made up. Recently, he admits, his head has been overflowing with too many thoughts, all tangled together and impossible to sort out. He even goes as far as saying that he would rather accept a quest to defeat the Demon King than continue drowning his worries in alcohol until he loses consciousness every night. Having settled the matter, he suddenly takes off in a hurry, declaring that he needs to reach the carriage as quickly as possible and bring the herbs over first. Before long, only Penelope and the gloomy man remain behind. The man then addresses her directly, making it clear that he intends to perform only the amount of work covered by the payment she has provided. Anything beyond that, he says, will be entirely her responsibility. Hearing this, Penelope silently clicks her tongue. Inwardly, she cannot help thinking that he is an unbelievably foolish man. The following afternoon, she purchases another 2,000 shares of stock in the Dudic Railroad Company. Afterward, she fills the previously empty wagon with food supplies and other necessities before finally leaving the magic tower. Now the two of them are traveling together inside the carriage. This world is filled with dangerous monsters, but from a practical management perspective, employing a single wizard is still preferable to hiring a large group of mercenaries, many of whom could be carrying questionable criminal histories. As long as a barrier powered by a magic stone is maintained, it should be capable of keeping mid-level monsters and anything weaker at bay. Powerful monsters generally remain deep within the forest, making a surprise attack highly unlikely. Because of that, there is little reason to remain overly worried about monster threats. As she observes the man sleeping soundly nearby, she realizes there is still nothing about him that inspires complete confidence. Even so, Lecter has already sent an official letter guaranteeing that if the wizard fails to carry out his responsibilities, the nearest branch of the Magic Tower will dispatch a replacement at no additional cost. With both a warranty and after-service support included, she decides that the arrangement should be acceptable for the time being. At the very least, the immediate crisis has been resolved. Although a lingering sense of unease remains, she has successfully hired a qualified wizard and stocked the warehouse with emergency food reserves. Even after accounting for the money she invested in railroad stocks, she still possesses 800,000 gold coins. In addition, she owns magic stones and purification stones, valued at roughly 150,000 gold altogether. That amount should comfortably sustain her until the following year. All she truly needs to do is endure until next autumn. By that time, the value of Dudic railroad stock should have climbed dramatically. The period in which she has taken possession of this body happens to be very close to the conclusion of the original story. Since romance fantasy novels always end on a happy note, the heroine is destined to receive a joyful future as compensation for every hardship she has suffered. Following that logic, the railroad business currently under her control is practically guaranteed to become an enormous success. Life really does come down to landing that one fortunate opportunity, she thinks. If she can establish a strong foundation for territorial development and create a well-structured business strategy, there is a good chance she will become incredibly wealthy by the time the territory reaches self-sufficiency. That thought leads her to wonder what she will do once she is rich. She pictures herself living peacefully in a beautiful home surrounded by a spacious garden. She imagines eating delicious meals every day while sharing a happy life with a handsome husband. Then, without warning, the face of that lazy wizard suddenly appears inside her dream. Her eyes snap open immediately. What kind of nightmare was that? She wonders. At that very moment, she notices the lazy man sitting nearby. Strange blue sparks resembling lightning are dancing around him. As she stares in confusion, he speaks up, seemingly aware that she has finally awakened. A sudden realization strikes Penelope. Those words were exactly what her former lover had once told her. The blonde-haired man keeps claiming that she must already be asleep, but the truth is that ever since their separation, he himself has not been able to rest properly. Only now has he come to understand how valuable the moments they spent together really were. Hearing this, Penelope cannot ignore the fact that much of his recent rise and success appears to have been fueled by the pain of their breakup. The thought irritates her instantly. Despite her efforts, the man continues to linger in her mind, and deep down she finds herself wishing that he is living the most miserable life imaginable. Even so, Penelope decides that the best course of action is to act as though she never saw any of it, forcing herself to push aside the complicated emotions that threaten to overwhelm her. Before long, someone approaches her and mentions hearing rumors that she managed to secure a loan of an entire 1,000,000 gold coins from a branch of the Imperial Bank. The person remarks that such an achievement is astonishing and praises her for the amount of effort it must have taken. Penelope explains that from the 1,000,000 gold she borrowed, she invested 200,000 into stocks that her father personally recommended. According to him, those stocks were certain to soar to their maximum value by next year. Because of that, her plan was to keep them for the time being and sell them later for a substantial profit. One of the vassals responds by saying that advice coming directly from her father is surely trustworthy. As for the smoked ham and flour packed into the wagons, Penelope states that she intends to see them distributed fairly among all the people living throughout the estate. The residents are overwhelmed when they hear the news. Some are so moved that tears nearly form in their eyes. After witnessing everything she has done for them, they genuinely feel that she has accomplished something extraordinary. However, Penelope soon hears people talking about how she had reportedly rushed everywhere in search of funds, and how exhausting the entire process must have been. One resident points out that while the territory might eventually be capable of repaying a debt as massive as 1,000,000 gold, Even managing the interest payments alone would be incredibly difficult. The discussion then turns to the collateral she presented to the Imperial Bank. Penelope finally reveals the details herself. She explains that she pledged the Lord's castle as security for the loan. The agreement gives her 1 year to repay the money, and the interest rate was set at 10%. The moment those words leave her mouth, the residents react with fury. They immediately question how she expects to return 1 million gold within only a single year. Many call the decision absurd, arguing that using the Lord's castle as collateral is practically the same as surrendering the entire territory. Trying to settle the growing uproar, Penelope reminds them that the bank manager was never going to hand over such a huge amount of money to their struggling territory without demanding something significant in return. She tells them that a risk of this magnitude was unavoidable, and that everyone should have been prepared for that reality from the very beginning. One of the residents eventually admits that the treasurer's reasoning is sound. They point out that the territory is practically facing starvation, yet everyone has been worrying about pride and formalities instead of focusing on survival. Hearing this, the treasurer steps forward and solemnly promises Penelope that he will dedicate himself completely to repaying the debt. Even if it requires exhausting every ounce of strength he possesses, he vows to see it through. He firmly believes that as long as they persevere, they can endure the coming year and overcome the crisis. Penelope turns her attention to what must be done first. After some thought, she decides that the merchants need to be called immediately, along with the leader of the merchant guild. The food they recently purchased and transported into the territory is nowhere near enough to sustain all of the residents through the harsh winter months. There is no time to waste. She authorizes the release of 100,000 gold and instructs the treasurer to use it for acquiring additional food supplies for the people of the estate. Furthermore, she approves another 200,000 gold to cover the wages of soldiers and laborers, while also securing the resources needed to maintain and repair both the inner and outer defensive walls. As for everything else, she suggests handling the remaining matters one step at a time. After calculating the funds left over, she finds that 500,000 gold still remains. By her estimate, that amounts to roughly 20 gold per resident, which should be enough to sustain them until the arrival of next spring. The realization eases some of the pressure weighing on her mind. The treasurer then comments that the next important task is ensuring an adequate supply of firewood for the castle and surrounding homes. Penelope reacts immediately, but before she can continue, one of the men offers another idea. Instead of spending resources gathering firewood themselves this year, perhaps it would be wiser to purchase fuel directly. He points out that using coal in an underfloor heating system would be significantly more efficient than relying solely on traditional fireplaces. Both Penelope and the treasurer stare at him in confusion. Startled, Penelope quickly replies that this is not what she had originally intended to discuss. However, the suggestion lingers in her thoughts. The more she considers it, the more she wonders why such an option had never crossed her mind before. If she were asked to identify the greatest inconvenience of this world, the answer would undoubtedly be the bitter winter cold. The stone structure of the Lord's castle and the wooden homes scattered throughout the territory offer little protection from freezing drafts. Chilly air slips through cracks in the walls with ease, making the interiors unbearably cold. Because of this, people rarely remove their shoes indoors, even when inside their own homes. As these thoughts connect in her mind, the concept of installing underfloor heating begins to take shape. Suddenly, a new possibility appears before her. She realizes that this idea could become far more than a simple improvement to living conditions. It might serve as the foundation for a large-scale business capable of operating across the entire state. Still, she understands that enthusiasm alone is not enough. Before moving forward, she must determine whether the concept is actually practical. She decides that the best course of action is to discuss the matter with the mage, and then return with a concrete proposal once she has gathered more information. One of the vassals asks whether she is referring to the maid who arrived with them in the carriage at dawn. Penelope confirms that she is indeed talking about that person. The man replies that the maid appears to still be asleep. He assures her that the moment he wakes up, a proper meal will be prepared and served without delay. Since payment has already been provided, their responsibility is simply to make sure he receives food and a comfortable place to rest. Penelope establishes a deadline, stating that everything must be completed before the end of winter. She also orders that once he has finished eating, he should be escorted directly to the office. The vassals immediately acknowledge her instructions. They promise that he will be treated with the greatest care and respect, and that every effort will be made to accommodate him properly. For a moment, it seems as though everything is proceeding exactly as planned. It would be ideal if matters continued unfolding this smoothly. Yet everyone present understands from experience that life seldom follows such predictable and orderly routes. As for the mage, his response is remarkably simple. He merely tells them to do it again. The mage took one look at the meal placed before him and instantly pulled back in disgust. The meat carried an overpowering fishy odor, the vegetables had long since lost their freshness and were completely wilted, and the bread was so stale that it crumbled at the slightest touch. To make matters worse, every dish was drenched in a sauce that was excessively greasy and unbearably salty, ruining whatever taste the ingredients might have had. Clearly displeased, he demanded that the entire meal be prepared again from scratch. Although the chef looked thoroughly annoyed by the request, he reluctantly agreed and began remaking the dishes. Meanwhile, a vassal who had witnessed the uncomfortable exchange went to inform Penelope about what had happened and asked how she wished to handle the situation. After hearing the report, Penelope instructed the vassal to invite the guest to her office. She also ordered that herbal tea be prepared and served along with some scones for the visitor. Once everything had been arranged and the table was properly set, Penelope finally welcomed the wizard into her office. The moment she saw him, she noticed how exhausted he looked. His appearance was so worn out that she briefly wondered whether he was even in a condition to cast magic. Maintaining her manners, she greeted him politely and asked whether he had managed to sleep well. Instead of responding courteously, the wizard answered in a sharp tone, implying that his appearance alone should have made the answer obvious. His rude attitude immediately irritated her, though she kept her feelings hidden. As his eyes wandered around the room and the surrounding territory, he openly commented on how impoverished everything appeared. He pointed out the terrible state of the land and remarked that it might be more sensible to allow the territory to collapse financially rather than continue struggling to maintain it. Considering his well-known habit of spreading unpleasant stories after ending relationships, the remark was not entirely surprising. Even so, Penelope remained calm and composed. She invited him to take a seat and presented the tea she had carefully prepared for the meeting. While looking around, the wizard noticed dust in several places and silently deducted points in his personal evaluation of the territory. Despite that, Penelope continued to believe the conversation would proceed smoothly. After settling down, the wizard became curious about the drink in her cup and asked what kind of tea she was serving. Penelope explained that it was made from young green herbs and encouraged him to taste it for himself. She then went on to explain the characteristics of different types of herbs. According to her, red herbs possess anti-notch properties, blue herbs help increase magical power, and green herbs are mainly known for their ability to restore health and vitality. Normally, herbs are processed into potions rather than beverages. However, Penelope explained that after recovering memories from her previous life, the market value of green herbs had fallen dramatically, dropping to only a third of what they were once worth. Because of that decline, she began experimenting with new ways to use them, instead of relying solely on traditional potion production. Through those experiments, she eventually discovered that green herbs could be brewed into tea. The resulting drink offered surprisingly beneficial effects. While the recovery was not as immediate or powerful as drinking a potion directly, the tea gradually eased accumulated exhaustion and reduced fatigue over time. For that reason, she believed it made a particularly thoughtful and valuable gift. The wizard admitted that turning green herbs into tea was a remarkably creative concept. He commented that such an idea was not something an ordinary person would easily come up with, and suggested that it reflected a certain level of insight and ingenuity. Curious, he took a sip for himself and acknowledged that the fragrance was actually quite pleasant. Penelope then offered him some scones prepared from whole wheat flour. She explained that, according to tradition, they should have a rough texture. As soon as he sampled the scones, the wizard's expression shifted slightly in surprise. He had not expected them to possess such a soft and tender texture. When Penelope asked whether he found them acceptable, he answered honestly that, although they were not made in the traditional manner, the taste was far from bad. In fact, he found them reasonably enjoyable. Sensing that the moment was right, Penelope decided to move on to the real purpose behind arranging the meeting. She produced a sheet of paper she had been working on earlier and placed it before him, requesting that he take a look. The wizard immediately recognized the page as the same sketch she had been absent-mindedly drawing not long ago. At first glance, he regarded it with a trace of contempt. To him, it seemed rather presumptuous for someone to assume that a simple drawing could be instantly interpreted and understood. Even so, he agreed to examine it, and cautioned her against expecting too much. After studying the page briefly, he asked what exactly the drawing was supposed to represent. Penelope promptly explained that it was a blueprint for a heating system. For a moment, the wizard was genuinely caught off guard by the answer. Encouraged by his reaction, Penelope began explaining the concept in greater detail. She pointed out that ordinary citizens are forced to survive the freezing winter months by relying on firewood or by wearing numerous layers of clothing to keep warm. In contrast, noble families often use enormous magic stones, capable of generating enough heat to warm entire mansions and estates. However, she emphasized that such methods create serious difficulties for common people. Purchasing large quantities of firewood is expensive, and obtaining powerful magic stones is even more unrealistic. During winters, when economic conditions become particularly difficult, these heating methods place an even heavier burden on households. Penelope then directed his attention back to the design itself and carefully explained how it would function. Her proposal involved connecting a network of pipes to groundwater located near the well. Those pipes would then be installed throughout the outer walls of the building as part of a plumbing system. By heating the water and allowing it to circulate continuously through the pipes, warmth could be distributed throughout the structure in an efficient and practical manner. The wizard listened attentively as she described the mechanism. The more he heard, the more impressed he became. Eventually, he asked whether she genuinely understood the principles behind such a system. Without hesitation, Penelope confirmed that she did. She reminded him that he had already seen evidence of the concept himself. Upon hearing that response, the wizard found himself unable to dismiss her ideas any longer. He reluctantly acknowledged the remarkable intelligence behind the design. The combination of creativity, practicality, and innovative thinking displayed in her proposal left a strong impression on him. In that moment, he could not help but recognize that someone with her talents might one day become an extremely valuable asset to the Magic Tower. Penelope voiced her worry that the piping system could eventually suffer from oxidation as time passed. However, she quickly added that this issue could be avoided by applying a coating made from a magic stone, which would protect the pipes from corrosion. The wizard then pointed to a wolf sketched within the design and questioned its purpose. Penelope explained that it represented a system for supplying magically heated water to the bath area. She went on to mention that the pipes would also need to be linked to the nearby water channel. Even as she explained the idea, a faint sense of uncertainty crossed her mind, making her wonder if connecting everything might prove more challenging than she had first imagined. Interested in the scale of the project, the wizard asked how many dwarves she intended to employ for the construction work. Penelope answered that she was currently thinking about hiring only 2 dwarves. The response immediately caused the wizard to explode in disbelief. Raising his voice, he declared that 10 dwarves would be the absolute minimum needed for a project of this size. Remaining composed, Penelope explained that even bringing in 2 dwarves would put significant pressure on their already unstable finances, as their situation was bordering on bankruptcy. Hearing this, the wizard nearly lost his composure. He could not believe she was attempting to undertake such a massive undertaking with what he assumed was merely 150,000 gold. When he asked whether that was truly the amount allocated for the project, Penelope corrected him without hesitation. The actual budget, she informed him, was not 150,000 gold at all. It was only 100,000 gold. Just then, an enchanted familiar pen suddenly appeared out of nowhere, leaving Penelope thoroughly surprised by its unexpected arrival. To her astonishment, the pen immediately began writing on its own. As words appeared across the page, it suggested that a sensor mechanism combined with a circulation pump could potentially solve the problem. Penelope wondered aloud whether creating such a sensor would be overly complicated and difficult to implement. In response, the pen continued writing, explaining that an alternative approach could be to operate the system manually. For example, someone could simply activate the boiler whenever the temperature inside the room dropped below a certain level, allowing the heating process to function without the need for a sophisticated sensor. After some discussion, they agreed to call the magical apparatus a boiler, with its official designation being a, quote, double boiler. They conclude that a version requiring manual operation would be far easier to manufacture in a shorter amount of time, and would also fit within their limited financial resources. With the matter settled to his satisfaction, the wizard prepares to leave. Curious, Penelope asks where he is heading, but instead of replying, he simply shuts the door behind him. His refusal to answer leaves her quietly fuming with irritation, The following day, Penelope resumes her work as usual when the wizard suddenly reappears. He reminds her that once the blueprint has been fully completed, his intention is to file a patent application before anyone else can claim the design. Setting a document down on her desk, he proposes a profit-sharing arrangement in which he would receive 70% of any earnings, while she would be left with the remaining 30%. Penelope immediately rejects the suggestion. In a firm tone, she states that if he expects her to accept only 30%, she might consider the proposal only if the percentages were reversed. Her response causes the wizard to erupt in anger. He loudly criticizes her design plans, insisting that the entire blueprint is absurd because it completely ignores the principles of magical engineering. Unfazed by his outburst, Penelope calmly reminds him that she is not a wizard, so naturally she would not possess the expertise required to include such details. As he studies her, the wizard reflects on how young she appears, scarcely more than 20 years old. He finds himself wondering what kind of background could have produced a woman like her. After a moment, he asks that she address him by the name Win. Penelope responds politely that he is free to call her Baroness if he wishes. Rather than accepting the title, Win immediately becomes irritated again. With open skepticism, he questions the claim and wonders where exactly the Baron is, while his supposed wife works herself to exhaustion, overseeing the territory's affairs. Maintaining her composure, Penelope informs him that the Baron died 2 months earlier. The unexpected revelation immediately creates an uncomfortable silence between them. Neither speaks for a moment until Win finally breaks the tension by mentioning that the dwarf workers are expected to arrive later that afternoon. Before they do, he intends to take a brief look around the area outside the castle. Penelope asks whether he plans to have a meal before departing, but he waves off the suggestion and replies that he can simply eat once he returns. With that, he suddenly launches himself away. To Penelope's astonishment, he summons a magical cloud beneath himself and soars into the sky. Even more remarkable is the fact that he performs the feat without reciting a single spell. The purity and control of his mana are extraordinary. For wizards capable of using flight magic without any incantation are exceedingly uncommon. While moving through the air, Win reflects on the herbal tea she had served him earlier. Green herb tea is known to help relieve exhaustion, yet he cannot understand how Penelope managed to come up with such an idea. To him, the strangest part is not the tea itself, but the fact that she seems completely unaware of how unusual her insights actually are. Nevertheless, he decides that he will continue observing her closely. Sooner or later, he intends to discover the source of the mysterious creativity and intelligence that allow her to devise such unexpectedly brilliant ideas. The perspective shifts to a person carefully examining a technical blueprint, wondering who could possibly be responsible for designing something so sophisticated. As they study the detailed schematics, they come to the realization that if the design were implemented exactly as outlined, the overall expense would be dramatically lower than that of the heating systems currently in use. Penelope begins considering whether the pipes could be manufactured from a material far less costly than copper, and the engineers explain that extensive testing with different materials would be required first, although they believe the idea is entirely achievable. Such a development could allow ordinary citizens who cannot afford expensive marble installations to gain access to efficient heating systems. She imagines the many advantages the invention could provide. Water could be heated by a fire burning inside a furnace, producing significantly greater thermal efficiency than a conventional fireplace. The resulting hot water could then be circulated for underfloor heating, while also supplying bathrooms with warm water. Should the system be constructed according to the specifications shown in the blueprint, it has the potential to revolutionize the field and become a truly groundbreaking creation. Vin, the wizard, personally handled every magical engineering component incorporated into the design. The dwarf, unable to hide his admiration, remarks that Vin's talents are astonishing and declares him to be a remarkable genius. Deeply impressed by both the effort invested in the project and the possibilities it presents, Penelope decides to provide them with a proper residence inside the Lord's castle so they can continue their experiments under suitable conditions. The dwarf confidently assures her that everything will proceed according to her instructions, and with that, the meeting comes to an end. The story then moves to Penelope as she continues her work while noticing a certain individual persistently trailing behind her. His behavior leaves her confused and increasingly curious. Eventually, she turns around and confronts him, demanding to know where he thinks he is going. He immediately insists that he is not heading anywhere in particular and is simply watching her. Penelope attempts to brush him off and explains that there is no reason for him to accompany her, but before she can finish, he cuts her off, saying something that instantly irritates her. Her eyes widen in surprise when he makes a vague reference to an incident from the past, one she does not immediately understand. After thinking about it for a moment, she gradually realizes that he may actually be talking about her husband. Internally, she reassures herself that there is absolutely no reason for anyone to worry about that issue, and continues walking away. As night finally arrives, Penelope lies awake in bed, reflecting on what has been an exhausting, bewildering, and emotionally draining day. Her thoughts inevitably wander back to the moment when she first received the news of her husband's death. More than anything else, what troubles her is the uncertainty surrounding what lies ahead. Their marriage had always been a political arrangement from the very beginning, and the emotion she feels toward a man she barely knew, a man whose presence in her life was largely limited to their wedding night, remained complicated, difficult to define, and filled with uncertainty. Reality confronting her is far different from the future she had envisioned, leaving her caught between irritation and deep reflection. By the following day, Penelope is once again buried beneath an overwhelming mountain of work. She spends so much time reviewing documents that it feels as though her eyes might burst from the strain. Unable to contain her frustration, she exclaims in disbelief, demanding to know what kind of person would ever decide to place the expense of accommodating a knight's assigned residence during spring and autumn on the territory's accounts. This is hardly the first time she has found herself under immense pressure, forced to rapidly formulate a practical business strategy for the land under her administration. As she meticulously sorts through records and reports, searching for anything that might provide inspiration, she gradually realizes that every profitable idea derived from previous efforts has already been utilized. There are no easy opportunities left to exploit. From now on, success will depend entirely upon her own creativity, resourcefulness, and determination. The circumstances demand a complete shift in the way she approaches challenges and develops solutions. Her thoughts drift toward various commercial ventures inspired by modern concepts. She weighs the possibility of opening a cafe, establishing a clothing shop, or perhaps investing in a more luxurious enterprise. However, after carefully considering the financial requirements, she quickly concludes that such projects would require far too much starting capital. Recognizing the risks involved, she decides that beginning with a smaller-scale venture would be the wiser course of action. Lost in contemplation, she absent-mindedly asks her maid to bring water so she can wash her hands. While cleaning them, her attention is drawn to the soap she is using. The texture feels unpleasantly harsh against her skin. In this world, soap contains no fragrance, and the poor quality ingredients commonly used in its production often leave the skin dry and rough. Members of the nobility and wealthy households compensate for this problem by purchasing costly scented oils to soften and perfume their skin. Ordinary people, however, have no such luxury and are forced to endure rough, damaged hands. As Penelope reflects on this difference, she begins to sense a promising business opportunity hidden within the problem. Motivated by her newfound idea, she immediately heads to Vin's room and asks through the door whether he is inside. At first, he curtly responds that he is not. Yet when it becomes clear that she has no intention of leaving, he eventually opens the door. His expression and tone reveal a mixture of curiosity and mild annoyance as he asks what she wants. Without hesitation, Penelope requests that he teach her alchemy. She quickly clarifies that she has no intention of learning how to create gold or pursue any grand ambition of that nature. Vin, however, is taken aback by the request. A naturally gifted prodigy, he entered the magic tower when he was only 3 years old and spent his entire upbringing surrounded by priceless magical knowledge and treasures. As someone who rarely shares his expertise, typically passing on information only once every decade to an individual possessing exceptional talent, he finds the situation rather unexpected. To him, learning how to produce a simple bar of soap is comparable to the most basic lesson taught to a novice taking their first steps into the world of magic. Even so, Penelope remains serious about her objective. Her goal is not merely to create ordinary soap, but to develop a special variety infused with green herbs, believing that such a product could become the foundation of a successful new business. Wynne asks her to wait a second, wondering what makes soap made with green herbs so remarkable. Penelope explains that the first advantage is its refreshing fragrance. In addition to that, it can help keep the skin smoother, healthier, and better hydrated. She points out that even ordinary villagers who cannot spend money on costly perfumes would still be able to enjoy a pleasant scent simply by using this soap while washing. She further reasons that because green herbs are one of the primary ingredients used in healing potions, they probably contain qualities that aid in restoring and revitalizing the skin. At first, Win dismisses the idea as nonsense. However, after taking a moment to think it over, he admits that the concept is not completely unreasonable. Since green herbs are known for their ability to assist in healing injuries, there may indeed be some truth behind her theory. After pondering the matter, he announces that he wants an equal partnership this time. The profits will be divided right down the middle, and he refuses to negotiate on that point. Otherwise, he has no intention of getting involved. From Win's perspective, producing ordinary soap is a fairly simple task. The challenging part lies in infusing it with green herbs, which requires magical expertise. Penelope quickly agrees to the arrangement and accepts the 50% share without argument. Meanwhile, Win reflects that testing every single stage of the process individually could take forever. He considers beginning with an examination of how the herbs behave when mixed into a potion, but even that approach sounds tedious to him. Despite finding the work somewhat dull, he cannot deny that Penelope continues to capture his interest. She is intelligent, unconventional, and often comes up with ideas that surprise him. Most people struggle to even meet his gaze, and because life usually feels monotonous, he tends to live however he pleases. There was even a period when not even the Emperor dared to treat him casually. Yet Penelope is different. He finds himself intrigued because he cannot easily predict what is going on inside her head. The uncertainty makes their interactions far more entertaining, and he becomes curious about what strange invention she will come up with once their current project is finished. The scene then shifts to the distribution of supplies throughout the territory. As Penelope approaches, she greets one of the men and asks about the condition of the provisions. He reports that although the prices are somewhat higher compared to the previous year, the quality of the goods is noticeably superior. Penelope then instructs him to make sure that winter clothing is handed out to all the workers. The man immediately assures her that he would never overlook something so important. He explains that he intends to gather the entire staff later that afternoon, so that everyone can receive warm and durable garments for the cold season. Because of Penelope's efforts, the wages that had been delayed for a long time have finally been paid. Once news spreads that the money has been distributed, the laborers begin carrying out their duties with renewed enthusiasm and motivation. A short while later, Penelope asks about the head of the merchant guild. One of the vassals calls out loudly for Pablo and tells him to step forward. Pablo looks confused and asks why he is being summoned. The vassal then informs him that the Baroness wishes to have a conversation with him. Pablo respectfully introduces himself. The moment Penelope lays eyes on him, something clicks in her memory. Wasn't this the merchant who used to travel alongside the heroine? If she recalls correctly, he had served as one of the heroine's most loyal supporters and useful accomplices in the original storyline. What confuses her is why he is spending his time in such a distant and neglected region when he was originally destined to become a famous musician. Pablo asks whether there is anything she requires, enthusiastically stating that he would search every corner of the continent if necessary to obtain whatever she desires. Slightly surprised by his level of enthusiasm despite the difficulties facing his business, Penelope explains that she needs ingredients for a soap-making project. Specifically, she requests caustic soda along with fruit oil, preferably of medium quality. She allocates a budget of 2,000 gold coins for the initial purchase, explaining that she intends to evaluate the materials first and place a larger order later if they prove satisfactory. The moment Pablo hears this, his expression brightens considerably. Delighted by the opportunity, he promises that the requested items will be delivered by the following day without fail. Penelope instructs him that once the shipment arrives, it should be taken directly to the workshop. Although Pablo's business has suffered setbacks, he confidently assures her that she can depend on him whenever she requires assistance. He insists that he will do everything in his power to meet her expectations. The next day arrives, and the caustic soda is delivered as promised. With all the necessary ingredients finally in hand, Penelope prepares to begin the soap-making process. When her maids discover what she is planning, they immediately volunteer to help. Penelope initially objects, telling them that they should focus on their own responsibilities instead of worrying about her work. However, the maids refuse to back down. They remind her that many of their greatest concerns have been resolved thanks to her efforts and leadership. Since she has done so much for them, they believe it is only natural for them to contribute and assist whenever possible. Touched by their sincerity and determination, Penelope accepts their offer. At the same time, she insists that they learn the soap-making process themselves. She tells them to pay close attention to every step and carefully observe everything she does so that they can acquire the skill as well. Just then, the door suddenly swings open. Win steps inside and asks whether all the materials have been gathered. Without wasting any time, he declares that they should get started immediately. Penelope asks where exactly they are supposed to carry out the work. In response, Win directs everyone toward the designated workspace. After leading them inside, he firmly warns them not to touch any of the equipment. The only thing they are allowed to do is place the ingredients beside the table. The moment Penelope enters the laboratory, she freezes in astonishment. Her eyes sweep across the room as she takes in the bizarre arrangement before her. Completely stunned by what she sees, she can only stare silently while wondering to herself what in the world is happening in this place. Penelope could only stare in complete confusion at the bizarre collection of devices before her. She had no idea what any of them were, nor could she understand how such equipment had somehow found its way into the castle. Sensing her bewilderment, Win explained that this was actually his personal workshop, and that he had created a portal linking it directly to the castle. The revelation left Penelope utterly speechless. Deep down, she questioned whether something like that should even be possible. Without paying much attention to her disbelief, Win instructed her to hurry and bring over the ingredients. He pointed out that without these tools, there would be no way to conduct experiments such as producing soap, infused with green herbs. Even while following his directions, Penelope could not rid herself of the unsettling feeling that there was something deeply strange about the entire place. After a brief hesitation, she cautiously asked whether it was genuinely safe for her to enter. Win answered in an unusually casual tone, saying that if she was curious, she could simply touch whatever she wanted and find out for herself. The suggestion immediately filled her with dread. Tears nearly formed in her eyes as horrifying thoughts raced through her mind, imagining herself becoming trapped inside forever. Seeing her reaction, Win let out a small laugh and brushed aside her concerns. Penelope could not understand what he found so amusing. However, before they proceeded any further, he gave her one serious warning. Under no circumstances was she to touch any of the experimental equipment scattered throughout the workshop. Once the ingredients had been properly organized, they began the process of making the soap. The procedure itself appeared surprisingly straightforward. Equal amounts of water and caustic soda were mixed together and stirred continuously until the soda dissolved completely. When the mixture turned clear and slightly thick, it was carefully poured into a wooden mold lined with parchment paper. Afterward, fruit pulp and fruit oil were added to the mixture. Win then introduced an essential oil extracted from green herbs, a substance he had painstakingly produced himself. He blended everything into the soap base, and as Penelope watched, the entire process seemed far easier than she had originally expected. Her thoughts, however, were interrupted when Win shot her a sharp glare and stressed that he had spent the entire night extracting the essential oil, one tiny drop at a time. Realizing the amount of effort involved, Penelope felt a slight sense of guilt. Clearing her throat awkwardly, she commented that it must have been a rather peaceful task for him. Her remark rendered him momentarily speechless. Penelope then began wondering aloud whether he had remained awake all night because of some broken-hearted sorrow. Observing how diligently he had worked, she continued making comments that only seemed to irritate him more and more. Finally, unable to tolerate it any longer, Win curtly told her to stop talking. His response left her completely confused, and she failed to understand what exactly had offended him. With every ingredient now poured into the mold, there was nothing left to do except wait for the soap to solidify and harden properly. Letting out a long sigh, Penelope acknowledged how much effort everyone had invested in the task. She then turned to the maids and informed them that they were free to leave and rest. Win tells Penelope that she is free to leave as well. His remark immediately leaves her confused. Why does he continue addressing her with such familiarity? Regardless of the unusual circumstances, she is still a noblewoman, while he is technically employed under her authority. As she lingers, Penelope comments that the soap seems to smell mostly like plain water. Win quickly corrects her, explaining that the fragrance comes from the green herbs mixed into the formula. She wrinkles her nose and remarks that she wishes the scent were somewhat stronger and more pleasant. Win explains that, in theory, additional aromatic oils could be incorporated to enhance the fragrance. However, before making any modifications, they first need to determine whether the green herbs actually provide the beneficial effects they are hoping for. Without hesitation, Penelope tells him to conduct the necessary tests. Her order catches Win off guard for a moment. He stares at her as though questioning whether a mere baroness is actually commanding him around. Unfazed, Penelope repeats her instruction. Win then asks whether she truly believes such a thing is appropriate. She calmly assures him that it is. Her answer leaves him thoroughly bewildered. After all, he has been regarded as a prodigy since the age of 3, and eventually rose to become the Tower Master. The idea that someone might expect him to show formal respect seems absurd from his perspective. He bluntly informs her that she should give up any hopes of receiving proper noble etiquette from him. Furthermore, he makes it clear that she should not speak to him so casually either. Ignoring the complaint, Penelope asks for his name. He responds that his name is Win, and tells her that she may simply address him that way. Nodding, she says she understands. In return, she suggests that he may continue calling her Baroness, since she recalls introducing herself with that title previously. Win immediately rejects the idea. To him, the title sounds unnecessarily long and inconvenient. Realizing the discussion is going nowhere, Penelope decides to let the matter drop. However, Win is not finished. He asks what her actual name is. The question surprises her slightly. After a brief pause, she answers that her name is Penelope. This response finally satisfies him. Win declares that this is as far as he is willing to compromise, and that he has no intention of making further adjustments. Penelope merely shrugs and tells him to do as he pleases. At that point, Win remarks that he frequently hears people describe her as an odd person. Penelope immediately fires back that she is nowhere near as strange as he is. She then admits that she still does not fully understand many of the bizarre things that seem to happen around her. A full day passes before the soap is finally ready for testing. The finished product looks surprisingly attractive, and Penelope feels eager to see whether their efforts have paid off. The first experiment involves washing their faces with the newly created soap. When she asks everyone how it feels, the responses are overwhelmingly positive. They report that their skin feels noticeably more moisturized, softer, and smoother than before. Several even comment that their complexions appear brighter, almost as if their skin is glowing. The next stage focuses on evaluating the scent. Opinions quickly become divided. Some individuals enjoy the mild fragrance of the green herbs, claiming that the fresh aroma makes them feel healthier and more refreshed. Others react less favorably, saying that the herbal smell is unpleasant and not particularly appealing. Listening to both sides, Penelope concludes that the fragrance clearly requires additional refinement. While considering possible improvements, her attention drifts toward Win. To her astonishment, he is asleep while still standing upright. She cannot begin to understand why he is even present in such a condition. More importantly, she cannot comprehend why he appears to have been suffering from heartbreak for such an extended period of time. For a moment, she wonders if broken relationships have somehow become a trend recently. Another possibility crosses her mind. Perhaps his supposed heartbreak is connected to the Tower Master. As she continues studying him, a startling realization slowly begins to take shape. Her eyes widen. Could it actually be possible? Could this rude, mysterious, and thoroughly perplexing man standing before her truly be the Tower Master himself? Even so, Penelope knew better than anyone what state he was actually in. His hair looked as though it had fused permanently with his head from neglect. Dark shadows hung beneath his eyes so heavily that they seemed ready to touch his jaw, and every inch of his clothing was wrinkled beyond saving. After giving him a long look, she silently concluded that the situation was hopeless. The Tower Master possessed the charm of an enormous, affectionate puppy, warm, loyal, and impossible to dislike. Competing with that level of natural appeal simply was not realistic. Deciding there was no point dwelling on it, she shifted her attention to the people gathered around her. Before moving forward with anything else, she announced that she wanted to personally use the green herb soap for an entire week and carefully monitor its effects. At the same time, she wondered if she might ask everyone present for a small favor. The response came instantly. They enthusiastically declared that helping her would be their honor. Thanks to that reaction, the beginning of the project progressed far more smoothly than she had expected. The maids encouraged her with bright smiles, expressing complete confidence that everything would work out successfully. A short while later, Win arrived and suggested that they should start discussing the soap's selling price. Before he could continue, however, Penelope interrupted him and recommended that he go inside and get some rest first. From her perspective, he looked as though exhaustion might knock him unconscious at any moment. Win was puzzled by her behavior. To him, it sounded as if she had suddenly returned to speaking in the formal manner she used before. He clearly remembered her saying they would be leaving earlier. Penelope explained that, after thinking it over, she had remembered something important. No matter what happened, he was still a highly capable wizard from the Magic Tower. Given the current circumstances and the number of people around them, maintaining a certain level of formality was simply appropriate. That was the true reason behind her decision. Afterward, she brought up another idea. She wanted to introduce orange-scented and rose-scented versions of the soap, creating 2 additional varieties. Beyond that, she hoped to eventually develop a sweeter fragrance as well. Although she considered that a project for the future, her proposal caught Win off guard. From his perspective, moving on to fragrances, this quickly felt premature. They had only just produced the green herb soap, and he believed they should first verify whether its effects were genuinely reliable before expanding the product line. Penelope disagreed. In her opinion, the early results already appeared promising. She asked him whether he honestly did not see the same potential. If things continued in this direction, she believed the soap business could become even more profitable than they had originally imagined. Win then questioned how quickly she expected the orange-scented soap to be completed. He pointed out that creating an orange fragrance would require orange essential oil. Producing that oil involved processing orange peels through extraction methods. Considering that their available workforce was practically non-existent and that their budget had already stretched beyond its intended limits, they would most likely have to handle the work themselves. He further explained that if their goal was large-scale soap production, manufacturing every drop of essential oil by hand would be highly inefficient. Purchasing a sample quantity of prepared essential oil would save both time and labor. Penelope carefully considered his reasoning. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that his suggestion made perfect sense. That conclusion led her to a new decision. She would need to meet with the merchant once again. Remembering that additional food shipments were supposedly being brought into the territory, she felt there was no reason to delay and resolved to investigate the matter immediately. Win could only stare at her. Inwardly, he wondered if she might actually be addicted to work. Wasn't she pushing herself far too hard? Yet when his thoughts drifted back to the frightened girl he had once seen in his laboratory, the same girl who had briefly revealed a surprisingly vulnerable and almost lovable side of herself, he found himself understanding why he continued putting up with everything. The scene then shifts. Penelope is shown handing payment over to Pablo. Accepting the money, Pablo politely expressed his gratitude and addressed her with the utmost respect. Penelope informed him that she needed both orange essential oil and rose essential oil. Hearing that request, Pablo asked whether she intended to create perfume. He added that if she needed any additional ingredients, he would gladly assist in obtaining them. Penelope shook her head and explained that she also planned to place future orders for jasmine and lavender oils little by little. Her goal was not perfume production at all. Instead, she intended to use the essential oils in the creation of soap. Pablo froze for a moment. Clearly surprised, he stared at her in disbelief. Was she seriously planning to manufacture soap scented with orange and rose fragrances? Penelope gives a calm nod, confirming that this is indeed what she intends to do. Meanwhile, Pablo silently urges himself to stay composed. Even as an immersion, there are times when unexpected ideas catch him completely off guard. In his experience, fragrances are typically enjoyed by nobles, while soap is already considered a luxury item for ordinary people. Because of that, he cannot help wondering whether there is truly a market for scented soap at all. More importantly, he finds himself questioning how she even arrived at such an unusual concept. Unable to contain his curiosity any longer, Pablo cautiously speaks up. If it would not be inconvenient, he asks whether she could tell him what kind of benefits or effects her soap is expected to provide. Penelope answers without hesitation. First and foremost, she explains, it smells pleasant. As for any additional advantages, those will require proper testing before any conclusions can be drawn. At the same time, a number of thoughts pass through her mind. Orange peel is known to help with pigmentation concerns and is often associated with anti-aging properties. Rose oil, on the other hand, is famous for its calming qualities and even carries a subtle reputation for enhancing attraction. After a brief moment of consideration, she decides there is absolutely no reason to share all of that information right now. Instead, she moves the conversation forward and asks when the requested supplies can be prepared. Pablo initially estimates that it will take roughly a week. Then, after reconsidering, he quickly revises his answer. In fact, he says, it will probably take only 4 days. Satisfied with that response, Penelope prepares to leave. Before departing, she informs him that the manager will take care of the payment arrangements and asks him to ensure the order is handled properly. Once she is gone, however, Pablo remains standing there in confusion. The entire situation feels strange to him. He had always been under the impression that the estate was struggling financially. Yet now it appears as though there is enough money available to fund projects and place new orders without hesitation. Leaning closer, he quietly remarks to one of the vassals that it seems the Baroness is doing an impressive job administering the territory in the Lord's absence. The reaction is immediate. The vassal shoots him a sharp glare, clearly indicating that such matters are not the concern of an immersion. He bluntly tells Pablo to focus on delivering the requested goods correctly and leave estate affairs alone. Pablo pauses for a moment before speaking again. There is, he says, one additional matter worth discussing. As a sign of goodwill toward the estate's acting representative, he has been considering preparing a gift. If she would appreciate such a gesture, perhaps a silver fox fur would be appropriate. The moment silver fox fur is mentioned, the vassal's expression brightens noticeably. Even in northern regions, such an item is considered exceptionally rare. Pablo explains that it seems like exactly the sort of present that could leave a positive impression on a valuable new customer. 2 weeks pass. The scene changes to one of the maids washing her face. The difference is immediately visible. Her complexion appears healthier and more refined than before. Soon after, the focus shifts once again. 2 of Penelope's maids hurry excitedly into her room. They eagerly ask whether it might be possible to receive another bar of the soap. One of them explains that her daughter becomes fascinated every time she sees it and keeps asking for one of her own. The other maid quickly agrees, hoping they might also be able to obtain an additional bar. Penelope reassures them that the estate will soon begin producing soap on a larger scale. She asks them to be patient for just a little while longer. The answer delights both women. Their faces immediately light up with excitement. The reason for their enthusiasm soon becomes clear. The soap is far less expensive than anyone had anticipated. Labor expenses had initially seemed like a major obstacle, but fortunately, Pablo supplied the necessary materials at a price significantly below the normal market value. As a result, the overall production cost became much more manageable. Thinking about the situation, Penelope quietly concludes that things are off to an excellent start. Just then, Win enters the room. Without any greeting, he casually remarks that the lazy dwarves are finally beginning to justify their existence. Penelope immediately becomes interested. Does that mean the boiler and hot water pipe project has been completed? Win shakes his head slightly. Not completely, he says. At least half of the work has been finished. The hot water piping system still requires additional time, but progress is moving steadily, and completion should not be far away. They have already located suitable materials for the pipes. Furthermore, according to the design calculations, once the heating system is installed, the interior temperature should increase by approximately 2 degrees. If everything functions as expected, there may even be an opportunity to construct a greenhouse in the future. Penelope thinks over the information for a moment before asking whether that means they will be able to test the heating system before the season's first snowfall arrives. The possibility immediately eases some of her concerns. Quietly, she offers a bit of gratitude to fortune itself. Win, however, is caught off guard by her reaction. To him, her response seems far too calm. Most wizards from the Magic Tower would probably be astonished by such progress and would not hesitate to make a great fuss over it. Looking at her curiously, he asks if she is capable of showing any more surprise than that. He even jokingly wonders whether she might secretly be much older than her youthful appearance suggests. From his perspective, she is surprisingly dull. After making that comment, he casually drops into a nearby chair and settles himself comfortably. Penelope chooses to ignore the insult. Instead, she tells him that she has an important appointment scheduled for later in the day. She explains that she will be meeting with the guild leader to finalize an agreement. Her intention is to have the merchant guild oversee the distribution and sale of the soap on behalf of the estate. Win raises an eyebrow at this revelation. He finds it interesting that she is already making plans for distribution, despite the fact that large-scale production has not even begun yet. More importantly, he wonders whether she already has a trustworthy guild leader selected for such an important partnership. Penelope responds honestly. She says she will not know until she has spoken with him personally. Her answer immediately catches Win's attention. The way she says it makes it obvious that she is not particularly familiar with the man. Because of that, he asks when exactly this meeting is supposed to take place. Penelope informs him that the guild leader should arrive in approximately 30 minutes. She then explains the reason she invited Win to be present. Since the guild and the estate will likely become business partners, she felt it would be beneficial for him to meet the guild leader as well. Win considers the explanation and ultimately agrees. If they are going to work together in the future, personally evaluating the man's character seems like a sensible decision. With the matter settled, the two continue enjoying a quiet break together. A plate of freshly baked scones sits between them as they drink tea. After taking another bite, Win casually remarks that he genuinely dislikes almost everything about this estate. However, he admits that the tea and the food are excellent. Penelope immediately interprets the statement as praise. Win lets out an annoyed scoff. If she considers that a compliment, he says, then perhaps she should have her hearing examined. Penelope quickly fires back that there is absolutely nothing wrong with her ears. The argument continues in a lighthearted manner. During the exchange, Penelope suddenly points toward his face. She remarks that his hair has become so unruly that it practically hides half of his features. Unable to understand how he tolerates it, she asks why he refuses to groom himself properly. Win appears completely unconcerned. He responds that if he were to neatly arrange his hair, she would probably end up feeling uncomfortable around him. At that moment, Penelope feels as though she has entirely run out of patience. She is thoroughly exhausted by his nonsense. Win, meanwhile, looks genuinely puzzled. Does she really not believe him at all? Before the conversation can continue any further, a vassal enters the room. He respectfully announces that the Lord's representative and merchant guild leader has arrived. Penelope immediately shifts into business mode. She instructs the servant to prepare tea and refreshments for their guest, and then asks that the visitor be shown inside. A short time later, the guild leader enters the room. As soon as he steps inside, he remarks that fate seems determined to make them meet again. The moment Win sees the newcomer, his expression changes. He recognizes the man instantly. It is Pablo. Confusion immediately crosses his face. Of all the people he expected to see, Pablo was certainly not one of them. Now he can only stare and wonder why this particular person has appeared here. Pablo glances toward Win and comments that the man looks strangely familiar. Inwardly, however, he finds himself puzzled. Why is the dog that used to trail after Betty everywhere now standing here instead? The situation feels oddly out of place. Penelope gestures toward a chair and invites Pablo to sit down. She also offers him something to drink, mentioning that this is usually the hour when her business associate comes by for a visit. Turning his attention back to Win, Pablo introduces himself politely. He remarks that Win must be a vessel and says it is a pleasure to make his acquaintance. He adds that he manages a small guild of his own. Despite the courteous introduction, Win does not respond in the slightest. Trying to maintain a comfortable atmosphere, Penelope quickly smooths things over. She tells Pablo not to pay too much attention to the wizard, explaining that he has never been particularly fond of conversation. Afterward, she places a bar of soap on the table in front of him and explains that it is a product she and the wizard created together. Pablo picks up the soap and studies it with interest. From a craftsman's perspective, it appears exceptionally well made. When he brings it closer to smell it, he immediately notices a faint citrus fragrance. The scent reminds him of oranges, causing him to wonder if they used the orange essential oil he had previously sold to them. Penelope asks for his honest opinion. Pablo replies that he had originally assumed scented soap might feel somewhat unusual, but after smelling it properly, he finds the fragrance surprisingly refreshing and appealing. She then asks whether he believes the product could be sold successfully. After considering the matter, he answers truthfully that he cannot say for certain. Penelope is not surprised by his response. She had expected him to be cautious. She already understands the problem. Adding fragrance increases production costs, and ordinary soap is already expensive enough that many commoners hesitate to purchase it. Introducing scented varieties would only make the price climb higher, which could reduce interest among everyday consumers. Nobles might find the novelty appealing at first, but noble tastes are notoriously unpredictable and selective. There is always the possibility that interest would fade after a brief period. Furthermore, noble households generally use soap simply for washing. Once they are clean, they apply scented oils or perfumes separately. Because of that habit, there is no pressing need for the soap itself to carry a fragrance. Pablo still considers the concept promising and prepares to share additional thoughts. Before he can continue, however, a maid approaches carrying a basin filled with water. She places it nearby and politely signals for him to test the soap himself. His expression initially appears tired and somewhat lifeless from the day's work. Yet after washing his face with the soap, the change is immediate. His eyes widen in astonishment. What is this? He wonders. The difference is obvious. His skin now appears brighter and healthier, almost glowing. The reaction leaves him stunned. Merely adding essential oils for fragrance should not produce such a dramatic effect. As someone experienced in commerce and negotiations, Pablo possesses a keen eye for details. He quickly realizes that there must be something more involved. Penelope confirms his suspicion. She explains that the product's value extends far beyond its scent. In fact, its official name is Green Herb Soap. Over a period of 2 weeks, 73 individuals participated in testing the product. According to the collected results, users reported smoother skin, a brighter complexion, and noticeable reductions in blemishes and acne scars. She then places several documents before him. These papers contain written reports from the participants themselves. Each report describes their personal experiences, observations, and preferences after using the soap. Having provided all the information, Penelope asks for his professional assessment. By the time evening arrives, Penelope feels completely drained. Despite her exhaustion, the negotiations have somehow concluded successfully. The contract has been finalized, and together they have managed to establish a preliminary marketing strategy. Under the plan, the orange-scented and rose-scented versions will be positioned as luxury products intended for influential noble families. At the same time, they can reduce the proportion of green herbs used in production and create a more economical version. This cheaper variant could then be offered to commoners at a price they can reasonably afford. Pablo asks if it would be possible for him to acquire a collection of the green herb soap. He explains that once the social season begins, he intends to present the product as a gift to several prestigious noble households. Penelope asks him what he thinks of the overall arrangement and whether he has any further suggestions to offer. Before Pablo can answer, Win abruptly cuts into the conversation. In his usual blunt manner, he remarks that Pablo remains as impulsive, superficial, and foolish as ever. The unexpected criticism catches Penelope's attention. She looks between the two men and asks whether they already know each other. Win dismisses the idea with a shrug. According to him, they are not truly acquainted. At most, they are connected through someone who knows someone else. Even so, Penelope cannot shake the feeling that Win seems unusually informed about Pablo. After thinking it over, she decides not to concern herself with it. As long as the wizard does not overstep his limits, she sees no reason to interfere. A short while later, Win changes the subject entirely. He asks whether the castle has felt colder recently, and whether preparations for winter are progressing properly. Penelope assures him that there is nothing to worry about. Based on the steward's reports, this year's preparations are considerably better organized than they were the previous year. Hearing that answer, Win nods. He states that in that case, he intends to move any useful equipment into the castle and permanently shut the door to his laboratory. Maintaining portal magic has been consuming an excessive amount of his mana, and he no longer wishes to continue wasting it. Penelope tells him that the choice is entirely his to make. For some reason, her answer causes a smile to appear on Win's face. The moment she sees that smile, however, an uncomfortable feeling settles over her. A strong intuition tells her that agreeing so easily is a decision she will almost certainly regret in the future. Penelope authorizes the steward to take complete charge of establishing a soap manufacturing workshop inside the communal hall. Workers from the village are recruited for the operation, and it does not take long before the once quiet building is filled with constant activity. At this stage, only Penelope, the steward, and Win possess knowledge of the exact soap-making formula. The production process behind the green herb soap is considered highly sensitive information, and Penelope firmly instructs the steward that it must never be disclosed to outsiders. From that point forward, the steward spends his days tirelessly traveling between the castle and the workshop. He throws himself into the work with such dedication that he barely takes time to rest. Meanwhile, the women hired from the village prove remarkably skilled. Their nimble hands adapt to the soap-making process far more quickly than anyone expected. Before long, large quantities of fragrant, high-quality soap are being produced on a regular basis. Every finished bar is wrapped with care in elegant packaging before being transported to the market for sale. The public reaction is exactly what Penelope had hoped for. Customers quickly develop an interest in the product, and the distinctive soap produced by Hallows begins attracting widespread attention. Discussions about its unusual qualities spread rapidly among merchants and travelers, carrying its reputation well beyond the local marketplace. As more visitors arrive in the area, nearby businesses begin benefiting from the increased activity. New taverns and restaurants gradually open around the workshop district to accommodate the growing crowds. Even general stores that had struggled for years suddenly begin experiencing renewed business. In a surprisingly short period of time, the soap workshop becomes the driving force behind a steadily expanding local economy. Despite the growing success, the steward remains focused on practical concerns. Looking ahead to the approaching winter, He reflects that there should still be sufficient time to process the remaining green herbs into extract before the cold season begins. Many of the workers who once relied on gathering and managing green herbs for income have now secured reliable jobs. Some work directly within the soap workshop, while others have found employment in the newly established businesses surrounding it. The villagers are openly pleased with this development. For the first time in a long while, many of them no longer need to consider leaving the territory in search of work elsewhere. Throughout the settlement, a quiet consensus gradually forms. Everyone understands who is responsible for this transformation. The prosperity now spreading through the territory is widely attributed to Penelope's efforts. Wanting to monitor the situation personally, Penelope speaks with several vendors and asks how business is progressing. They explain that the majority of sales are currently taking place within the territory itself. Most customers are hearing about the soap through recommendations and personal conversations rather than formal advertising. After hearing this, Penelope concludes that greater effort must be directed toward attracting buyers from outside the region. As she considers possible strategies, an idea comes to mind. She suggests packaging green herb soap into attractive gift sets. Such products would be easy for travelers and visitors to purchase as souvenirs before returning home. Since the patent for green herb soap has already been secured, the product's exclusivity remains protected. If the soap continues to be available only within Hallows, it could gradually establish the territory as a destination worth visiting. More tourists would arrive over time, creating additional opportunities for economic growth and steadily increasing revenue throughout the region. Naturally, not every bar produced by the workshop emerges in perfect condition. Some soaps end up with damaged edges, uneven shapes, or minor cosmetic flaws that make them unsuitable for regular sale, despite remaining fully usable. Rather than wasting these products, Penelope proposes a different solution. She recommends distributing the imperfect bars among the workshop employees as part of their benefits. In addition, she suggests making them available to villagers at reduced prices so that more people can afford to use soap regularly. At the same time, Penelope stresses the importance of teaching proper hygiene practices to the workforce. In particular, she emphasizes the habit of washing hands with soap. For most residents of the village, soap is currently used only on limited occasions. People generally wash their faces with it in the morning, use it during bathing, or occasionally clean their hair every few days. As a result, soap is still viewed as a luxury item rather than something necessary for everyday life. Penelope explains that this perception should change. According to her, a simple habit such as washing one's hands before eating or after returning home from outside can significantly reduce the spread of illness. Based on information she has read, proper hand washing is especially useful in helping prevent common colds and other everyday diseases. One employee listens with surprise and admits that he has never heard such claims before. He wonders aloud whether soap can truly provide benefits that substantial. Penelope responds that the information originates from a medical text written by a highly respected physician from the southern regions. In her view, there is little reason not to test the idea. If the practice turns out to be effective, the potential advantages for the population would be considerable. With that reasoning in mind, she proposes introducing proper hand-washing habits throughout the entire estate and encouraging everyone to participate in the effort. The moment the villagers hear the servant's account, a wave of murmurs spreads through the gathering. Everyone begins exchanging uneasy glances as they recall the story of seeing Win flying through the air. Even with their limited understanding of magic, they know that such a feat is far beyond ordinary ability. The display leaves a strong impression on them, and before long, speculation starts to grow. Some wonder whether he might actually be an extraordinary wizard from the Magic Tower. They have heard stories about magicians and their ranks, and according to popular rumor, the higher a wizard's rank, the larger their pride becomes. The thought makes them increasingly nervous. Perhaps the compensation they offered him was far too small. Perhaps they should consider hiring another magician instead. Penelope has heard similar stories herself countless times before. Tales often circulate about powerful wizards using their abilities to amass enormous wealth, exploit those beneath them, or even force entire groups of people into servitude. Such stories may be exaggerated, but they are common enough that they cannot be completely ignored. Making a living is difficult enough without inviting the attention of someone capable of overwhelming ordinary people with magic. If a wizard were truly determined to abuse his power, the consequences could be disastrous. Seeing the growing unease among the villagers, Penelope quickly puts an end to the discussion. She firmly states that the wizard will remain in the estate until the terms of their contract have been fulfilled. As long as he does not cause harm to the territory or its people, she intends to overlook his eccentric behavior for the time being. Although the villagers remain somewhat reluctant, she continues her explanation. Expanding the estate's businesses requires specialized knowledge and abilities, and Win possesses skills that cannot easily be replaced. Even if she wished to dismiss him, the reality is that she lacks both the authority and the means to force a magician of his caliber to leave. With that, she declares the meeting concluded. Almost immediately afterward, she lets out a sudden sneeze. The unexpected sound causes her to blink in confusion. She wonders what brought it on so suddenly. Before she can think further about it, the man standing beside her quietly remarks that she ought to start wearing thicker clothing. He adds that he will inform the head maid and have warmer garments prepared for her. The man notes that the weather is colder than expected, and that winter must be approaching rapidly. His comment only deepens Penelope's confusion. According to him, the current weather is actually quite mild compared to the winters they normally experience. The statement leaves her staring at him in disbelief. At that very moment, she is already shivering uncontrollably. Some time later, the scene shifts to another part of the castle. Win casually informs her that an early cold snap appears to be arriving this year. In his opinion, the spirit of snow must be having a wonderful time. Still trembling from the cold, Penelope asks whether he could perhaps persuade that troublesome spirit to calm down a little. Win immediately dismisses the idea. The spirit, he explains, does not listen to humans. Spirits generally view mankind as noisy, crude, and vulgar creatures. Expecting one to obey a human request would be pointless. His explanation does little to comfort her. Instead, Penelope finds herself questioning why the castle remains so unbearably cold, despite everything that has been done. Inwardly, she complains that this situation is absurd. It already feels as though 30 minutes have passed in a frozen wasteland. If this is what the locals consider mild weather, then she cannot even imagine what a true winter must be like. To make matters worse, the castle itself feels colder than the outdoors. The thick stone walls retain moisture so efficiently that the entire structure resembles an enormous ice storage warehouse. Rather than providing warmth, the castle seems determined to drain every bit of heat from her body. Trying to distract herself from the freezing conditions, Penelope shifts the conversation toward more practical matters. She asks about the progress of the water system project and whether construction is advancing smoothly. Win assures her that everything is proceeding without issue. He explains that he dismantled pipes from a magical engineering train and transported them to the estate. Those pipes will serve as the foundation for their work, and local craftsmen are already preparing to replicate them. The answer satisfies her, but another question immediately comes to mind. She wonders why he is standing here in person instead of simply using that mysterious door of his to travel back and forth whenever necessary. Win casually reveals that conditions beyond that door are even worse. The magic tower, he explains, is located near the northern reaches of a massive canyon. Compared to that region, the weather here is practically comfortable. The revelation leaves Penelope momentarily speechless. As she studies him, another thought suddenly occurs to her. Recently, she has noticed a visible change in his appearance. Without thinking much about it, she asks whether he has been eating properly these days. The question causes Win to stare at her as though she has lost her mind. He cannot understand why she would suddenly ask something so personal. Penelope, however, continues regardless. If that is the case, she wonders, then why has he become so thin? Compared to when he first arrived at the estate, he appears almost half his original size. The difference is significant enough that she has begun feeling genuinely concerned. For a moment, silence hangs between them. Then Win's expression darkens. Irritation flashes across his face as he slowly asks whether she truly understands who she is speaking to. His voice carries a dangerous edge, and he questions whether she has developed a death wish. After all, very few people in the world would dare comment on a high-ranking wizard's weight so casually. Yet Penelope, shivering beneath layers that still fail to keep her warm, seems completely unaware that she has once again wandered straight into dangerous territory without realizing it. Penelope stares at him in complete disbelief. From her perspective, the matter is painfully simple. She is the one who hired him, after all. Regardless of how powerful or frightening he may be, he is still an employee, working under a contract with the estate. The thought seems perfectly reasonable to her. Win, meanwhile, appears to reach a completely different conclusion. For a brief moment, he looks as though he has just remembered something important. A strange expression crosses his face before he lets out a small cough. Of course, she is a noble. More specifically, she is the young lady governing a failing territory. Somehow, despite all her unusual behavior, he occasionally forgets that fact. Penelope remains completely unconcerned by the dangerous atmosphere surrounding him. Instead, she folds her arms and tells him that she dislikes adults who refuse to take care of themselves. If he would simply eat his meals properly and stop giving people reasons to worry, then she would have no reason to continue nagging him. She has been concerned about his appearance for quite some time. If he starts taking better care of himself, she promises that she will stop bringing the subject up altogether. Win lets out a long sigh. The irritation in his expression remains, but eventually he gives in. At last, he mutters that he understands and tells her to stop nagging. Satisfied with the outcome, Penelope immediately drops the matter. Win remains seated in silence afterward. His thoughts drift elsewhere. A familiar voice echoes through his mind, sounding faintly annoyed, as it comments that somehow that dim-witted woman has managed to crawl all the way here simply to get on everyone's nerves. It remarks that everything had supposedly been settled already. Win chooses not to respond. Across from him, Penelope suddenly falls quiet as well. The silence between them lasts only a short while before a knock interrupts the room. The steward respectfully announces himself and asks whether he may enter. Penelope grants permission. Once he steps inside, she asks what business has brought him there. The steward's normally composed expression carries an unusual hint of excitement. He reports that the dwarves have completed the underfloor heating boiler. The announcement causes Penelope's eyes to widen immediately. Without hesitation, she rises from her seat. The boiler has been installed in the unused annex near the gardener's residence, and she immediately decides that they should go and inspect it. As they make their way there, she learns that the dwarves have already begun operating the system. The news only increases her anticipation. Upon arriving at the annex, they are greeted by one of the dwarves, who enthusiastically invites them inside. The dwarf urges them not to linger outdoors in the cold and politely requests that they remove their shoes before entering. The request leaves the steward momentarily confused. Remove their shoes? What kind of custom is that? Nevertheless, they comply and step inside. The moment they enter the annex, both Penelope and the steward freeze in place. They are utterly stunned. The room is warm, not slightly warm, not merely less cold than the castle. It is genuinely comfortably warm. The difference is so dramatic that it feels as though they have stepped into an entirely different season. Penelope immediately crouches down and presses a hand against the floor. Her eyes widen further. The warmth is radiating directly from beneath the tiles. Looking toward the dwarves, she asks whether they truly installed it. The dwarf proudly confirms it. According to him, the project progressed quickly thanks to the wizard's brilliance and the dwarves' craftsmanship. Together, they overcame every challenge that arose during construction. Penelope then notices the flooring itself. Curious, she asks whether they laid entirely new tiles. The dwarf nods. First, they removed the original flooring. Beneath it, they installed a network of pipes designed to carry heated water throughout the structure. Afterward, layers of plaster were applied over the pipes before tightly fitted tiles were placed above everything to maximize heat transfer. Additional plasterwork was completed on the walls before fresh wallpaper was installed. The explanation leaves Penelope staring at them with genuine admiration. What kind of geniuses are these people? Faced with such an incredible achievement, she can think of only one response. She immediately lowers herself onto the floor. The steward is startled by the action and hurriedly asks whether she is feeling unwell. Penelope quickly assures him that she feels perfectly fine. In fact, she has never felt better. Then she tells him not to stand there awkwardly and instead sit on the floor himself. The suggestion strikes the steward as extraordinarily strange. Why would anyone willingly sit on the floor? Even so, curiosity wins out. Before long, all three of them are seated together. The moment the warmth seeps through his clothing, the steward finally understands. The floor is unbelievably warm. For several seconds, nobody says anything. They simply sit there, basking in the comfort. A deep sense of relief washes over Penelope. At long last, she feels as though she has been saved. Finally, salvation. Soon afterward, formal contracts are signed with the dwarven craftsmen. Work begins immediately to replace Hollow Castle's traditional heating methods with underfloor boiler systems. Ironically, the person who once dismissed the entire project as ridiculous becomes one of its most devoted supporters. The steward starts spending most of his time at the gardener's annex. His behavior quickly becomes a source of irritation among the castle staff. Many of them complain that he barely appears at his workplace anymore. Some wonder whether he has forgotten his responsibilities altogether. Others cannot understand what could possibly be so special about the annex. Surely a room is just a room. Yet the moment they visit for themselves, they understand completely. The warmth is irresistible. Before long, not only the steward, but nearly everyone seeking refuge from the cold begins visiting regularly. The annex gradually transforms into the most popular location in the estate. An unspoken arrangement naturally develops. The living room becomes the men's domain. The bedroom is reserved for the women. Without any official declaration, the annex unofficially becomes Hollow Castle's summer lounge in the middle of winter. Day after day, more people gather there. Laughter becomes more frequent. Work becomes easier to endure. For the first time in a long while, the castle feels genuinely alive. Late one evening, long after everyone else has settled down, Penelope remains busy with her work. Stacks of documents cover the table before her as she reviews reports and calculations by candlelight. Eventually, fatigue begins to catch up with her. Deciding that she has accomplished enough for one day, she prepares to retire for the night. As she rises from her seat, however, she remembers something Win mentioned earlier. According to him, the region surrounding the magic tower is even colder than this. The northern canyon where the tower stands experiences far harsher winters than anything Hollow Castle endures. The memory lingers in her thoughts. On her way out, she glances toward the men's section of the annex. There, she notices Win among the others. Despite being a wizard capable of impossible feats, he is resting quietly within the warm room, just like everyone else. For a moment, she simply watches him. Then she gently closes the door. As she walks away through the corridor, her mind sinks into deep contemplation. The warmth of the annex remains behind her. Yet the image of the northern canyon, and of a man who has apparently endured such winters his entire life, refuses to leave her thoughts. The maids chatter excitedly among themselves, marveling at a comfort they had never imagined possible during the harsh winter months. They confess that the rooms are so warm that they could practically sleep wearing summer night clothes. Compared to this annex, they say, the castle feels unbearably cold. The mere thought of returning there makes them shiver, and several of them immediately declare that they would rather come back here as soon as possible. As Penelope listens to their enthusiastic conversation, a hint of regret crosses her mind. If only the bedrooms were large enough to accommodate every maid, she thinks, then everyone could enjoy this warmth together. Addressing them, she explains that the dwarves have assured her that the heating installation in her room will soon be completed. Once the remaining adjustments are finished, that section of the castle will also become fully usable. After the retainers' rooms receive heating, she intends to gradually expand the system to the servants' quarters as well. The announcement fills the maids with delight. Their faces brighten instantly, and they eagerly express how happy such news makes them. Some even remark that if the entire castle is eventually heated, they would have no complaints about spending the rest of their lives serving there. At that moment, the head maid approaches Penelope and informs her that the roasted sweet potatoes are ready. As requested, she has also brought fresh milk to accompany them. Penelope thanks her before asking whether she offered some to the guest currently staying in the living room. The head maid replies that the visitor declined the offer outright. The answer catches Penelope off guard. It seems that whatever heartbreak or emotional turmoil he is enduring has affected him more deeply than she realized. Nevertheless, she firmly believes that people must eat properly regardless of their circumstances. No matter how troubled someone may be, they cannot neglect their meals. With that thought in mind, she takes the tray herself and decides to check on him personally. When she enters the annex, everyone present immediately begins rising from their seats in respect. Penelope quickly waves them down. She points out that there is no need for such formalities every time she appears. Even though a wall separates their living spaces, they are still all residing within the same palace grounds. She encourages them to sit comfortably and not concern themselves with standing on her account. Only after everyone settles down again does she make her way toward Win. The wizard glances at her arrival and casually remarks that if she is searching for the restroom, she merely needs to continue straight ahead. Ignoring the comment entirely, Penelope instead orders him to get up and eat the roasted sweet potatoes. Win immediately dismisses the idea. In his opinion, sweet potatoes are nothing more than food for starving commoners, and he refuses to be fed such strange things. Penelope pays no attention to his protests. Before he can object further, she simply picks up a piece and pushes it toward him herself. The unexpected action leaves him stunned. A moment later, he erupts in disbelief, unable to comprehend that she has actually forced a sweet potato into his hands. Completely unfazed, Penelope explains that this is not merely a sweet potato. It is a roasted sweet potato.